1, 2, 3, pass! Oh, yeah, that's that mahi, boy. That's that mahi.
Kia ora whānau, and welcome to Around the Grounds, a podcast from New Zealand Rugby bringing you closer to our national game. There are so many opportunities to be involved in rugby outside of playing. Ensuring our players are physically prepared and can perform week in, week out is a crucial part of today's professional game. Our strength and conditioning coaches have become key members of our high performance teams, as well as so many of our community rugby teams as well. Joining Around the Grounds to discuss the role of strength and conditioning in rugby is Black Ferns Sevens strength and conditioning lead, Amanda Murphy. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Look, thanks for coming in. Like, firstly, I talked to Tomasi before a little bit and sort of a little bit of a cheeky question to start. But, you know, sometimes if you're not happy with maybe some of how the girls are lifting or whatever, you just jump in there and smash it out and show them, you know, just load up the bench and say, come on, girls, let's go.
I've been known to do it in the past. Not so much anymore. Yeah.
No. I just
Someone's got to keep them honest.
Well, that's it. But look, firstly, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, like you're one of the backroom staff, I suppose, you know, so we might not necessarily, you know, see you on the TV when we're watching the games, but like, what's your role? Where are you based? Like, what do you do? Give us a little bit of insight to where you are at the moment.
Cool. So we're based in the Mount Maunganui. Beautiful place. Great place for surfing, although I don't get out there because I'm scared of sharks. My role essentially is to support the players to be the best physically possible they can be, and also to educate or grow knowledge with the coaching group around what's their best way to train and make sure that we're ready for game day or tournaments and multiple tournaments. That's kind of the bee's knees of it, without going into too much detail.
Totally, and so I think maybe you've just got back as well. So obviously being with the team, being on the road, managing them, not just when they're here at their base, where you probably can get into a bit of a good routine and, you know, you're doing, you know, your sessions, you know, boom, 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 boom. But being away with the team as well recently, that's a part of it as well, and probably maybe a quite a challenging part.
Yeah, it's an interesting one when you're travelling, you know, 2 to 3, or every second or third or fourth week across a 9-month period, and you're expecting them to get the best out of their body and play well and perform every game, and then, you know, and some of those back-to-backs that we've just done. We have a pretty standardised week that we use, and then we have a slight variation off the back of, if it is a back-to-back tournament, so consecutive weekends, we adjust that quite drastically, which is quite different watching other teams and other teams' approaches. So I always keep an eye on that, but more so just to see what they're doing rather than follow suit. And we're really confident in our structure and how we get the best out of our players. But
also, I mean, pretty cool as well, isn't it? Like, the job's taking you abroad, takes you to some pretty cool places. I think next stop might be Hong Kong. Like, I know there's a job to be done, and no doubt, you know, that takes up most of your time, and there's a huge amount of focus on that. But you know, the job takes you to pretty cool parts of the world, and also playing, like, the evolution, particularly of female sevens, like, it is growing like at a rate. We're going from having more and more teams now that they're becoming full-time, they're becoming centralised, they're becoming professional. That's got to be a pretty cool environment to be in as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Mount, don't get me wrong, and you know, we can always sit on the beach and stay away from the sharks, but it also, you know, you get to jump on the big bird and get around the world.
Yeah, like you said, we go to, well, this season alone, we go to 9 different destinations, and that's pretty cool. We're going to Spain, obviously Madrid, in a couple of months, Hong Kong, as you mentioned, in 2 weeks, just come out of, where we've just been. It's easy to forget, you know. We're in Canada, and then we went to LA, and prior to that, you know, Perth, love Perth. Spent time there myself prior to this role. Dubai, Cape Town. So you get to go some pretty epic places, and by the time we hit tournament week, so that sort of 10-day lead in, all our work's done, and it's just refining and making sure that the mind's clear, the body is ready to go, and then away we go, fire into it. So we get to have a wee look around. We generally have 1 day rejuvenation where we get to go out, and as a management crew, we always do an activity together. Cool. That's pretty cool, and we've done some pretty epic stuff over the time. My favourite probably, I'm going to say it was my one. We went sand duning on quad bikes in Dubai.
Oh my God.
So that was pretty epic. But
that is amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Not
Pretty
bad.
cool
Not
job.
bad at all. You're a former player yourself, and we'll chat about that a little bit. But what got you into S&C?
What got me into it? It was a pretty easy one. When I was playing, I was a reasonably talented athlete, I suppose you could say. Didn't train,
Yep.
just sort of got
Just rocked
by
up.
and just rocked up. I used to have Meccas before I played and
Yeah.
didn't really understand and just kind of jammed.
Yeah.
And then I shifted to Australia and ended up playing for Queensland over there. Prior to that, playing for Canterbury and doing that sort of thing. And I had a player say to me, you know what, you can make any team you wanted to if you actually trained. And I was said, I was like,
Whoa.
what does that mean? So I thought about it.
Thought I
and
did.
Then I was like, and then one of the Australian coaches at the time said, oh, would you be interested? And I said, well, actually, that's really nice of you to offer, but I'm going to go home and try and get myself a Black Fern
Yeah.
jersey. So I did that, got home and I think trained for about 9 months and cracked it. So
Yeah, cool.
that kind of passion.
It's almost
or
had a bit
transition.
of trained yourself for a bit, almost
Yeah.
learnt how to get yourself best prepared to try and make
100%.
our national side, and that kind of got the wheels
They
spinning.
got the
did it?
wheels going, and then I
Yeah.
was like, far out, if I could, like little girl from Geraldine, if I
Yeah.
can do that, well, far out, there's way more gifted people in the world than I am. So that kind of drove the passion to
Yeah.
go, we can do anything we want to do.
But that's got to be so handy though, doesn't it? Like the sort of looking back those, because like you say, played some rugby in Aussie, played some rugby for Canterbury, and did play for the Black Ferns. Did those experiences help you today? Like when you're dealing with the players, when you're putting together programs, like, when you're interacting with probably quite a broad cross-section of players and age and stage, do you pull on those, a little bit to help you in your role today?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think it gives you more insight to when you are in those moments, when you're in the pressure moments, what does it feel like, who's around you, who's supporting you. So when you're well supported from your essence, well, I'll take my lens on an S&C I had, and I always felt really well supported and like far out. If I know that my body is in the best possible position, and my S&C is backing me 100 to be the top, then I know that no one can stop me. So that perspective, but then also being in the grind of it day in, day out. It wasn't professional back then. Wasn't that long ago, by the way.
Yeah.
But you understand, you get appreciation for what you're asking of the players day in, day out. Because every day they turn up, they're on trial.
Yeah.
Every time they're doing something, it's, they're in front of someone's asking a question of,
And they're competing with each other in some ways
they're
as
gonna
well,
get
aren't they? Yeah. Totally. Like there's, when you start looking into it, like when you start really looking into it, like there is a lot that goes into strength and conditioning, like in terms of, let's apply it to your role today. Like, what does that look like? How do you design the season? How do you then break it down to week by week? What does that look like for you? Is there a wider network of S&C coaches that you're tapping into, or actually, the campaign is unique, the role is unique, so it's up to you to build that plan?
I think there's probably a few questions to be answered in there. The first one is, so what are you trying to achieve ultimately? What's your vision? What's your mission? And you're building back from that. So we know that we've got Olympic Games. So we knew that when I walked into the role. And then it's going backwards to the point where you are at the current point when I walked in and working out what's the best way to do that.
Yeah.
So there's a roadmap essentially from the 18 months it'll end up being in the role myself, for this role particularly, and then I'm breaking that into 4-week blocks or 3-week blocks depending on what turnarounds we've got and that sort of thing, and then just making sure that we're ticking the boxes we need to along the way so we know that we're heading in the right direction. So that's probably the overview of that whole piece. There was another question in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think even too, like breaking it down, I imagine there's the team plan, there's the individual plan, there's the weekly plan, like this, like you say, you've got that vision, that mission and that roadmap.
Yeah.
But then within that, I'm sure there's injuries, new players come in.
Yeah.
Like you say, 1 week is a week here and you're doing your thing. And then actually, in a couple of weeks' time, you're off for back-to-backs and you're going to play, potentially 14, 15 games of sevens in 10 days or something, So like, what does that look like as well, like for you as the lead in that space?
To be brutally honest, it's pretty hectic.
Yeah.
So like you said, you've got, you'll have a travelling group, you'll have a non-travelling group. They're all on different plans to get them to where they need to be if they need to be pulled in. You've got your injured crew. We're lucky enough that we do have a S&C at home looking after both men's and women's teams.
Non-travellers and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's been really beneficial this year. We didn't have that last year. But yeah, and then you're starting to go, well, okay, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Where do we need to go? By when?
Yeah.
How much? And then you've got to consider the coaching plan on top of the physical plan. And yeah, there's lots of different pieces. And then obviously the return to play, then it involves more of the physio lens. And so there's a lot of moving pieces. And we've got a squad of 20, which doesn't sound like a lot. However, when you're moving that often, it's quite busy and hectic. So your system has to be really good.
I suppose that North Star is really important, isn't it? Like knowing your direction and your mission, and it sort of guides you through everything, no matter how dynamic and nimble the space all becomes. And I imagine it can be pretty nimble and dynamic. Also quite exciting though, I'd imagine, because even more so than the men's space, like the game's evolving rapidly, like in terms of their programs at different stages of maturity. Yeah. So they're probably, I'm only guessing here, but there's probably some players and some teams that you come up against that can go, shoot up quite quickly because maybe they've got a settled group and they've had a period of time full-time being together, or they might have, their best side available for a while, or whatever it may be. It's like, and I'm sure that's the same for you as well. Some of the players that you are taking might be only 1, 2, 3 years into, full-time strength and conditioning. So that's probably where you can get some pretty cool gains as well, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the earlier they are in their career, the easier the needle is to shift, right?
Yeah, totally.
Don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out. But what I quite like, it's not really answering this question, but what I quite like about the diversity of our group is we've got a really wide range of different types of athletes.
Yeah.
So not only have we got, a year 2, 3 and Georgia Miller, 20, sorry, she's turned 20 now.
She's a gun.
Yeah, up to Kelly Brazier, who's 34, sorry, Kels. But there's a wide range of ages, but within that as well, you've got, really different types of athletes, but they play the same game. Yeah. So you've got a real power, speed athlete in Porsche.
Yeah.
And then you might have a real working athlete in Sarah Hiddeny.
Yeah.
So you've got really different types, and we've got that across the board, and not many teams have that.
Yeah.
So a lot of teams have the same, and
we've
got a lot of variation.
Yeah.
Which makes it a bit more dynamic and change. And
so when you are away, which is a pretty cool aspect of it, like, what does game day look for you? Like you get the players, ready, but also you're probably on the bag. You're probably required to like jump in on the wing every now and again. Like, is it literally all hands to the pump and just go for it? Because those tournaments look hectic.
Yeah, they're pretty hectic. When I compare it to 15s, which is where I've spent majority of my time. It's everything happens 10 times the speed, regardless whether it's on the field or off the field. Yeah. So you're just adapting constantly. A training day, it's one-man band, really.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get on the field, not very often. Most of the time it is just monitoring and making sure that we're hitting the targets that we need to be hitting to prepare best.
Yeah, I love it. There's sort of like you hinted at before, probably the relationships are just as important as the knowledge. And, I love that saying, which I've said a couple times before, that Jace Ryan often says is, people don't care what you know until they know that you care, like they know, that you're really invested in them. So, I mean, that probably is a huge part of your job. Like I know the coaches are really important in guiding the team, but you actually see and interact with these guys probably as much as anyone, don't you?
Yeah, I definitely would have the most crossover in terms of time with athletes. So, like you see, coaches often will be at a field session in that time there, but as an S&C, you are in the back room a lot, but you spend so much time with the players. So I'd say pretty critical to the relationship of how everything, all the dynamics work. You hear a lot of stuff that maybe wouldn't get brought up.
Yes.
And then it's just filtering things that need to be filtered and things that don't need to be filtered. And I think that works both ways from, a management point of view and a player point of view. So you're kind of not the, I don't want to say middle guy, but
bit of a conduit though.
Yeah, you kind of hear a lot.
Yeah.
And because you are spending so much time with those athletes, you do create really good, strong relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your S&C lead, in terms of your training, for a start, like when, you went through and did your training to be an S&C coach, like, is there a gendered aspect to the training, or actually when it comes to taking, our wahine toa, taking our female players, is that something you need to pick up yourself a bit more and realise how to adopt your tips and tricks and techniques to a fully female team, or is there a bit of learning in that space as you're coming through?
I think when I went through, there was limited learning. It wasn't a heavy emphasis on it. It was a while ago now. But I always knew I wanted to work with female team.
Yeah.
Or female athletes. So through the last 10, 12, I've lost count. I've always worked with females.
Okay.
In female teams. So I guess it's kind of, you're learning on the job as you go, and then you're digging into more, and then a lot of it is self-research.
Yeah.
Which most things are these days, and then trial and error. And I'm lucky enough that I've worked with some pretty awesome female teams and athletes in the past that go, okay, cool, let's go and let's have a crack at that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it isn't necessarily taught in those early foundational courses, so to speak. Yeah.
I hope it is going forward, because it just, professionalism is going through so many aspects of not just rugby, but just women's sport in general, at the cricket sides and the rugby sides, and there's some rugby league and football. Like, it's becoming such an important aspect to it all. So I'm sure you actually have a massive wealth of knowledge. Talk to me a little bit as well, like, and I feel like I'm saying this goes across so many different roles, but your job is to make them bigger, faster, stronger. Like,
bigger, faster, stronger.
Bigger, faster, stronger. I read that somewhere, but
yeah.
But how much is actually being able to take some cues around how people are feeling, their mental state, the stress they're under, anxiety? It might be return to play protocols. Someone really wants to get going because they're in competition for a spot. They want to get to a tournament, but you're not quite ready just yet. Like how important is sort of that EQ as opposed to like your knowledge of strength and conditioning?
Highly important, I would say. As we know, stress, well, for those that don't know, stress isn't just physical. It can be emotional. It can be, oh shit, I forgot the washing.
Yeah.
Oh shit, we're not going to put the washing in, but I'm about to go training. I'm making something up here, but compounding factors. Shit, my relationship's not very good at the moment. There's multiple factors that will influence how we turn up and train, or our tissue capacity. So the capacity to go out there and train fully.
Yeah.
So if I know that, so we track wellness daily. So if we know that someone's wellness is down slightly, we'll go and have a conversation before we make any adjustments. We also do some physical testing at the start of every week to capture ideally what our training load is giving us neuromuscular fatigue wise. So if they're down on that and they're down on wellness, then we're probably looking at, we're going to have a conversation. If the conversation matches what we're seeing, then it's like, okay, well, we need to adjust the load here. We need to be smart about this. So there's many pieces. It's not just they're fit, we'll just let them go for it.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't always work. You might get away with it sometimes, but it doesn't always work. So consideration around health and wellbeing is massive in our group.
Yeah.
Having the ability to have that, I do have quite a high EQ, and understanding players are slightly off is quite handy, because you'll go and have a conversation, and then you'll be like, oh shit, no one's seen, cool, well, let's just pull back here, or actually, no, I'm really good, I'm firing, and then we'll go the opposite way. Yeah. So it's it's just keeping on top of that, and sometimes they won't tell you. So
I was going to ask that.
Especially if it is perceived as a selection day or week,
Yeah.
but every day is a selection day. So
Totally, and I can imagine, 100%, and I can imagine too, like, and this is no doubt something you're all over because it's a part of the program. But you have a lot of younger players coming in, and maybe their training age is not as much as, like you say, Kelly's now been, a professional athlete for ages, and she works hard. You have other people who are coming in basically not long out of school,
17.
yeah, but they probably, like you say.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it's male, female, whatever. Athletes are proud and they just want to come in, and if that's what everyone's doing, I'll do it too, and not say too much and just think that's what's got to be done. So you've probably got to keep an eye on that stuff, don't you?
Yeah, and that's one thing we're constantly mindful of, is that you can't just bring a school kid in here and run them out as much as you would a professional who's been in there for 10 years or 3 years, or it is different. So they might handle it in the short term, but they definitely won't in the long term. There'll be a hurdle somewhere.
Yeah. There'll be a pressure point somewhere.
Yeah.
Look, do you have advice for anyone considering a career pathway into S&C? Is it something? It's almost, you're a little bit self-taught, which is quite cool, and as a player, took that into what is now your profession. Like, any advice for anyone out there who is getting into it? Because in terms of the female game, there's so many more teams popping up. There's so many more opportunities. Even at the junior levels, I know there's going to be a couple more female teams in my boys' grade this year. I know my local rugby club's got a female rugby team, senior team starting for the first time. So there's just all these opportunities in and around the game. Do you have any advice for anyone who's thinking about getting involved?
When I think back to what's allowed me to do what I've done, is I've always been ambitious.
Yep.
So, dream big. And then the second part is go and do a lot of things. So I spent 6 years with Athletics New Zealand, learning a lot of really foundational stuff away from rugby. So I went from rugby to athletics, to coaching athletics, to back to rugby with Canterbury FBC, and then Black Ferns 15s, and then into this role here. But the biggest thing for me is, don't pigeon yourself into I'm a rugby S&C, because you start getting a little bit narrow minded. Well, I feel I do, but variety, go and experience other teams, see what they're doing, different sports, see what you can learn from there. That's probably one thing that's really helped me in this role and the previous roles.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Look, a few quick fire questions to finish off. Any S&C coach that you've never met that inspires you? And
never
why? Is
met.
there any sort of
Well, I was going to say someone
out there,
that, Can I say that someone that I have met?
Of course you can.
Angus Ross. He's just a guru, and every time I talk to him, he just, a wealth of knowledge. He's been a long time in the game, and he's had a lot of success. But not only at the top level, he'll talk to you about his development athletes and things they're doing. He experiments a lot, but it's definitely someone that I look up to, and he's just a guru. Yeah,
awesome. So you're part of the Sevens whānau now. What's your favourite part of being a part of this group? Because it's different. That's one thing that you realise when you talk to people from the various teams. There's a huge amount of difference to being involved in the Sevens. Can say a 15s campaign, a 20s campaign, even super stuff. It's different. What part do you love?
The family feel, the culture, to every day you just feel like you're part of something, part of a family, but then part of something bigger. You're always trying to inspire those around you, and just the family feel to it. It's the most connected team I've ever been a part of.
Loudest team, I reckon, from all the clips I see. From
loudest too.
Everything I see, I'm that team is always on a high, is always
on a high.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
They're just, the team, everybody's themselves.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way. You can just be yourself, and it doesn't matter, if you're I don't even know where I'm going with that, but
different
you can just
tunes,
bring
different
whatever you
backgrounds,
want.
different people, just bring yourself and
people
rip in.
Accept you, or more than accept, they embrace you.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
Probably a sort of question you get all the time, but what's a great way for probably, I think, an amateur player to get fit for the season? There's, like you say, there's a lot of probably self-taught athletes out there, from someone like yourself. What would you say to people who are out there trying to be the best they can be in the club scene?
In a 15s game or a sevens game?
Let's go sevens. Let's go sevens
Let's go
because
sevens.
that's the gig at the moment.
Yeah, sweet. One thing I would say is be strong enough to run and run strong enough to lift.
Yeah.
I know that probably doesn't make any sense.
I think I know exactly what you mean, but explain it. Explain it.
So you want to be able to build a decent running capacity, but you don't want to go too far down the endurance end, but you don't want to go too far down the strength end. So you kind of want to balance of both.
Yeah.
So you might lift 2-3 times a week, and then you might run, start off with 2 times a week, depending on your previous history.
Yeah.
And then you might go to 3, and then you might go 4, and then you might look at splitting your sessions and then intensifying a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's many ways to skin a cat, and there's...
Because, you're right. There's more of a focus in 15s on at times you've got to be a certain size and shape, don't you? You've got to be a little bit bigger, and perhaps that gets put to the front of the queue, and the running stuff comes in behind, but you've got to get
Other way
balance in
around.
sevens, don't you?
Yeah. Well, when I say other way around, it's probably not the other way around. It's probably pretty even, but you don't necessarily need size in sevens. Some players will excel with a little bit more size, and some will go the opposite way. So it's you want to have a balance. You're no good if you can't run. So even if you can sprint once, if you can't do it 3 times, then you're probably not going to be much use.
Totally. And they were great conversations actually we had with some of the Black Ferns Sevens and All Black Sevens post sort of in and around COVID, because there's no sevens to play. So they went back to play 15s.
Yeah.
And they're like,
different
20 minutes of rugby gets pretty hard pretty quick, but that's the way they've conditioned themselves, was to play the game, over that period of time and fast. So yourself, you've been a Black Fern, favourite moment in the Black Fern jersey, that's a pretty awesome achievement.
Favourite moment. Oh, it's got to be your debut, doesn't it?
Yep. Talk us through it. Where was it? When was it?
I was in England. I can't even remember the score again.
Testing the memory, am I?
You are testing the memory.
Do you remember, did you get given a jersey, someone pass it over,
Actually,
that sort of stuff,
Yeah, we had Graham Henry come in and present
good.
it, which is quite funny because obviously I worked with him in the World Cup. He reckons he remembers, but I don't know.
He just says that to everyone.
Yeah, he's just saying that. But that was a pretty special moment.
That's very cool.
Getting your first jersey and just going, oh shit,
here we go.
I did get there.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is awesome. All right, last question. What do you do to sort of unwind, or what do you do in your spare time? Because I can tell from having this yarn, it's pretty hectic. There's a lot on the go, and you probably could fall into the trap of when you've got a spare moment, learn something new, growth, upskill, all that sort of stuff. But what do you do to unwind in your spare time?
Well, I used to play golf, and I'd like to say I was a handy golfer, but at the moment I haven't played a lot because you're right. Any time spent not at training or I'm trying to learn, trying to get better at things. But outside of that, just chilling with some mates and I need to get home to Christchurch. That reminds me.
Not a bad part of the world to chill in, but like you say, it's always good to get home and connect with family and friends as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Look, good luck for the rest of the year. There's some tournaments coming up. There's some pinnacle events coming up. It sounds like it's all go, so I really appreciate you making the time to come in and have a yarn to you, and good luck for the rest of the season and beyond. Who knows where you will end up as well.
Who knows?